Okay, Penn State fans, it is the first Monday of August. It's time for the Blue White Breakdown. Max, Ralph, myself, Bob, Flounders. We're going to be going on Mondays from here on out through the season. I believe that Max and Johnny McGonigal are going to be going live at some point on Thursday. It's our goal, Max and my goal, to try and do a couple of individual ones if time permits, maybe in between so we can get to more than two, because I know you guys love hearing me talk. But Max, literally 48 hours away, 48 hours have passed since James Franklin talked to us up in State, since Joe Hermit talked to us up in State College.
That's where you were going with that.
Since James Franklin met with us, and we've written a bunch of stuff, the three of us. We got a lot more to get to. You had some practice observations.
Yes, sir.
What jumps out at you here on Monday, August 4th, as far as maybe something you're going to be writing about or something that stayed with you, whether it was something Franklin said, something one of the coordinators said, or something one of the players you talked to said?
I've got two names in mind that, Bob, as you kind of mentioned at our post-media day video that we did very briefly, whenever James Franklin says something, there's always something to it. We've tried to outline that for you guys as listeners for a while now on the podcast. But James Franklin and Jim Knowles both said two names that I have stuck with me ever since. The first one, tight end Khalil Dinkins, and the second one, Jim Knowles, shouted out freshman cornerback Darius Dixon, who, Bob, is a name that you have been all over as well.
When I saw the blue-white game, I was like, that dude's going to play real soon.
Oh, yeah.
I got a story coming later in the week just about A.J. Harris and Elliott Washington. This kid's really, really, really good.
Yes.
And I do think Jim Knowles and James Franklin and Terry Smith, sorry to cut you off, but
go for it.
If it's a freshman, especially a corner, they think that can help. He'll make a big jump on the depth chart. Terry Smith knows he's got four corners that can play in Harris, Tracy, Washington, and Davian Collins, who's another underrated player. But it's going to be 5 or maybe 6 because they're not going to be able to keep this kid off the field. He's tremendous. The other player you mentioned, we're going to talk about the Freaks list. Bruce Feldman of the Athletics Freaks list just came out maybe a couple hours ago. I think there's 4 there. I believe there's 5 players. He went to like 101 names. I think 5 players made the list. He was one of them.
That's right.
But you're right. Dinkins, James Franklin said it when I asked about the tight ends. His teammates have said it. Dixon is a good one. And I have just been thinking a lot about I was waiting for James to acknowledge it, and we weren't going to see it until he wanted us to see it. But all indications are that if all the offensive linemen are healthy, that Anthony Donko is probably going to be the right guard.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. You said it, to dive into it a little bit more. Like, he is one of their best 5 linemen.
Yeah.
I think, like, that's not a knock on Cooper Cousins because he's the guy that we've kind of penciled into that right guard spot this whole time. Mm-hmm. I think that he will play a ton, even if Anthony Donko is the starting right guard. But Nolan Rucci was incredible down the stretch. Anthony Donko was really good when he was healthy. They have 6 or 7 guys on the offensive line that could start on pretty much any Big Ten roster, and you gotta make some concessions here and there to get those guys in there. If they feel Anthony Donko is one of the best 5, he's going to be in there, and it sounds like that might have to happen at right guard.
Yeah, and the only thing that has me curious is, and I think regardless, he's going to see action. Maybe even if it's just him and Cooper sharing snaps. But Penn State always talks, and Franklin talk about with the offensive line, especially versatility, position flexibility. If that's the case, I mean, he needs to kind of get comfortable there. So I'm just kind of curious, and I'm sure they have a couple of great candidates. They're going to kind of need to identify a swing tackle other than Donko or Rucci, just in case he spends a lot of time inside it. And they've got some really, really compelling options, but I'm really, really interested to see how this plays out.
Bob, on that, I think it's Javen Williams right now, a guy who we heard a lot about in the spring because Rucci and Donko were not practicing fully. He was able to get a ton of reps and heard some really good things, and it's just still too crowded for him to really make a huge impact. So he's probably, second on the depth chart at a lot of different spots right now. But don't forget about a guy like Egan Boyer in his second year.
Yeah.
Said a lot of good things about him over the past calendar year. And Garrett Sexton as well in his class. Those two kids have a lot of buzz. But I think Javen Williams is turning into, when you talk about positional flexibility, Javen Williams can play at 4 spots. Like, if they needed him at center, maybe, but we haven't seen him taking snaps. But I think the other 4 spots, he could do it.
Yeah, and I do think when you talk about Andy Kotelnicki, I just know he is so smart. He knows what he's got up front. We're gonna see some 6 offensive lineman sets. We just are. I mean, it makes too much sense with the running threats they have, with a quarterback who can really now do some damage in short yardage if they need to. I just think, and I know they like the wideouts are going to get better. I know they like their tight ends, but when you think you have 7 or 8 offensive linemen that maybe could start at almost every Big Ten school, why not get him in the game? And it's going to be really hard to defend that. And I just think I'm expecting a lot more of that. You know how, in 2022 and 2023, maybe a little to 2021, it was when Yurcich was the coordinator. It was that T formation.
Yep.
I think you're going to see maybe a different version of that, but it'll be at the line of scrimmage with maybe more bodies up there.
Do you remember? Of course you remember. Everybody remembers.
Yeah, the Iowa game when they had 11 offensive linemen in the game and an illegal quarterback. Yeah.
I was going to go toward Illinois, the homecoming 9 overtime game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I meant. I didn't mean that.
They had about 10 linemen on the field. Penn State could do that this year pretty easily. Yeah. I also think, don't discount the idea of putting Nick Singleton or Katron Allen in a wildcat there. Split Drew Aller out wide and get yourself an extra blocker into the backfield. Teams can put 10 players in the box against Penn State.
Yeah.
With this offensive line, if they've got 7 or 8 offensive linemen back there, they're not stopping them. So I think there's a lot of different things they can do.
How about Katron as the wildcat, and then Venga as his fullback?
I love it.
Then you load it up front. If it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, I mean it's going to be. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to say it's going to be as good as the tush push, but it's going to be real tough to stop that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Bob. I think there's a lot of things they can do.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move it along a little bit. I wanted to just I said it in our video. The kid did make Feldman's freaks list, but I think he probably should have been a little higher the way his teammates are talking about him. Elliott Washington, just what he's capable of this year with Harris on the other side. I mean, if you look at what Washington did last year when he wasn't a starter, every time he was in the game, he was making plays on the ball. He was among the leaders in passes defense. He probably got railroaded in the Ohio State game on that penalty because he was just that was actually a pretty nice play. That it was a very questionable call. He is just, when you talk about somebody who can play man coverage and is as strong and as fast as that, I could see him and Harris being talked about almost in the same breath by the end of the year. And I know how good Harris is. I think that Washington is gaining traction fast. I think Knowles is a very happy camper with what he has, especially at corner and at safety. And Darius, all those guys. I mean, when we talk about stuff like your observations, and I think you wrote a story about who might wear the green dot. I don't know how Jim Knowles doesn't look at what he has and say, we got to have at least 5 defensive backs on the field at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, there's increased depth at linebacker. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There are guys that they're happy with.
Yeah.
But if you're getting the best 11 players on the field with this defense, it's going to come at defensive back. There will be packages where they play with 3 linebackers, but I'm going to guess more times than not, it's going to be 5 defensive backs and 2 linebackers. For whatever reason, Bob, it just feels like throughout his career to this point, Elliott Washington has, we've started to talk about him more because he played a lot last year, but it's still not enough. He was a really high-profile recruit when he came to Penn State. He flipped from Alabama, and that was before Nick Saban retired. This is a guy who had who could have played anywhere he wanted to, chose Penn State, and now has come here. And weight room warrior is the term that's been on my mind today with the freaks list coming out. He's incredible. He's been the fastest guy on the roster since he got here. I remember the the kind of jockeying with Daquan Hardy 2 years ago to argue about which one of them was the fastest. I think, Bob, you said you had on the record this weekend that you ran a 4.29.
Yeah, Feldman needs to update his freaks list. I don't know if it just happened, but King Mac confirmed it, and King said he ran 4.31, and he said that this guy's faster. So I am going to stay with, because he said a couple people told me 4.29 and said it was legit.
Yeah. So look, Elliott Washington is a budding star. AJ Harris might have him beaten coverage skills right now, but as far as what Elliott Washington can do this year, I mean, we're looking at all Big Ten caliber for sure.
Yeah. Let's, before we get to the freaks list, I think this is the right time to talk about the Saturday practice observations. So I know it was, we always get kind of a limited window. I think you might have got 30 minutes. This time, I just brushed up on your story. So of the things you wrote, what maybe just for the readers who have not checked out your story yet, and you should, what really jumped out at you?
I think first and foremost is that Penn State overall looked like a pretty healthy team at the moment. It's always kind of a question mark, and James Franklin said it in the press conference before we got there. They had a laundry list of guys on the injured list, but it was their first padded practice.
Yeah.
And kind of it was kind of a prove it moment where they had to see guys do it in pads before they took them off of that injury list. And, some of the big names that we did not see in the spring were out there. Tony Rojas, tonight, Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant. You go down the list, guys who had off-season surgeries or injuries. All the big ones were out there, including Alonzo Ford, Andrew Rappelier, who obviously had some season-ending injuries. Cam Wallace is another one. They looked pretty healthy. Of course, that goes with losing Caden Saunders for a long-term injury, which, tough break for him and a guy that, again, we thought was going to contribute in some capacity this year for Penn State as a wide receiver. Just dealt with so many injuries. It's a shame. But first and foremost, looked pretty healthy. Secondly, to stay in that wide receiver room, Bob, what we saw was very limited. You're right. We did not see any one-on-ones between corners, safeties, and wide receivers. That's usually a really big differentiator in fall camp. But Trevor Pena looked more like a polished wide receiver than we've seen since maybe Jahan Dotson, Parker Washington. I mean, it was just the way that he was going through even individual drills. There's a clear difference in his agility, his burst than what Penn State has had back there in a long time. Kyron Hudson and he were both leading the lines for wide receivers. I think those transfers are going to be good for Penn State. And Pena was in a pass-happy offense last year.
Yeah.
Not what it's going to be this year. The numbers might not be as big, but I'm really looking forward to getting a little bit more of him this fall, because just based on the very first impressions, I was impressed for sure. Backup quarterback job. I know that's one you want to talk about. Both Gronk and Jackson Smolik saw about equal reps. Like, this one really is a competition. We do not have an answer yet. We may not have an answer for a while, but it's an interesting one. And just to continue our talk about Darius Dixon, man, let me tell you, the body's there.
Yeah.
The body is there. So yeah, like you said, Bob, if you guys listening have not seen the practice notes yet, got a couple of big ones up there for you. And we get one practice a week now through the rest of camp. So make sure you keep tuning into those.
Okay, we're rolling along here on the Blue-White Breakdown, Monday, August 4th, lunchtime. Max Ralph, Bob Flounders. Back to the backup quarterbacks before we get to the freaks list.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the average fan hears James Franklin say stuff like, "It's really close. We don't know when it's going to be. It's going to be a while. It could play out into the start of 2026 instead, and then it won't be a backup job. It's going to be the starting job." This is a year where they're all in. My take on it, I just wrote something, is I think that ultimately they're going to get some chances early in the season in the non-conference games, both of them. But it behooves James and Andy and Danny, if they think they know who's the better player, they got to name that guy. Just because this is a critical year, there's only so many reps to go around. Drew needs his reps. I remember how James said last year, Bo needed his reps too. Like, the backup is going to have to get repped over they're going to have to make a distinction. I think if they think they got a guy, I don't think James is going to hesitate. This is too big of a year to try and dangle a carrot to try and keep both guys happy. They got more quarterbacks coming in, and let the chips fall where they may. But I will say this, Max. It was the blue white game, right? It was live, but it wasn't like live. You couldn't really hit any quarterbacks, but I was very pleasantly surprised by what I saw from Jackson Smolik as a thrower. It was not the most ideal day, and a runner, and his mobility. And I just think that James isn't BSing us when he said, hey, I thought he was going to be rusty. He wasn't, and it's pretty tight. I think that's true, but I do think at some point, either in August or early in the season, unless they are just dead even, you got to know who the number 2 guy is, and you got to move forward.
I think it's a fair point. I think, like you said, in a year like this, it probably is a benefit to know, not even just for the quarterbacks, but for everybody else on offense, to know if anything happens to Drew Aller,
right,
this is the guy we have to rally behind now. I think that's important in a lot of different ways, but I do think that if and when that decision is made, it's probably something that James Franklin is going to keep behind closed doors more times than not. Because as you know, Bob, and I think as a lot of our listeners know at this point, everything James Franklin says about a position battle like this with the backup quarterbacks, where he says it could go on throughout the season and throughout next year even, that is 100% entirely a play at making sure both guys are happy and don't transfer at the end of the year. Now, granted, that may be an unavoidable outcome depending on who does win the backup job, because as we saw with Bo Pribula last year, if you want to go be a quarterback at another school, you got to do it in the winter portal, because by the spring, it's too late. Playbooks are already in. Schools have their guys. So, look, it may be unavoidable, but I think it is best for Penn State to have a guy named.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know which guy it is right now, because, like we said, in practice, they're taking equal reps. They both came right after Drew Aller, depending on the drill. You know, Grunk was the guy last year, but as you said, Smolik isn't rusty. And ever since his freshman year, James Franklin has gone out of his way to say, look, Smolik's got probably the best deep ball on our roster.
And he did it. You saw it in the blue white game.
Yeah. I think he's better than people are giving him credit for, at least from a physical tools standpoint. You know, decision making and all that is a completely different story, especially when you're in live action. But, when they're in practice and throwing routes on air, all 3 of those guys can really sling it. They don't have an answer right now. I think they need one, like you said, Bob, but we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, we are in the age of the transfer portal, and that could be a factor. I just trying to think about, this is James's 12th year, and the circumstances might have been a little bit different, but a couple of number 2 namings that stand out to me were when he named Trace McSorley, Hackenberg's backup. I think it was ahead of either it was the 15th season, because Trace had redshirted his first year, and he didn't waste any time. Obviously, it was a good idea to have Trace back up Hackenberg. And also, I think it might have been Media Day 2022, or maybe the first right up, but he didn't waste much time naming Aller the backup to Sean Clifford. It was, again, like Captain Obvious, right? The guy's got, an arm, that's unlike many others in college football. So I guess my point, though, is transfer portal, no transfer portal. If they see a clear separation, I think, as much as you want to keep those guys happy, I would not be surprised, even if they doesn't say it publicly, those guys are going to know who's 2 and who's 3. The number 3 guy, eventually when that is known, he's probably going to be looking around, because more guys are coming in. They got a freshman they're going to have to look at in Beckham on the roster now. So it never stops. But I do think the longer it goes, the more curious everyone's going to get.
Yeah, you're right on track there. Look, James Franklin has never brought in a transfer quarterback in this era of portaling, but if one of those guys leaves, this is a way too early look ahead to next year, but they may not be confident in whoever's starting. There's a lot that could play out with this quarterback room, but to stay in the here and now, I think it's best to name a QB2. The runway, though, up to Oregon, Bob, gives them a chance to give both of those guys significant in-game reps, and truthfully, I think that could end up being the differentiator, is how those guys perform in, semi-meaningful snaps against those 3 cupcakes to start the year.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is, and I do agree with that, by the time they yank Drew, to give both of them an equal amount, or you know what I mean? Are you just going to say, okay, Jackson, whatever happens in the opener, you're going to start the fourth quarter, and then, Ethan, you're going to get the fourth quarter in game 2. I just hope they don't yank them after giving one series each, and it's so the score is so lopsided that you really can't see what they can do. What would be really interesting is if they gave them some series when the game was still a game, like in the second quarter, and it's 21-3.
I wouldn't be
Now
surprised.
we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
I would not be surprised. Let me just put that out there. I would not be surprised this year.
That would probably if you're going to do it, that would be the way to do it. If you really want to know, that's how you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I genuinely would not be surprised if, the games are maybe not in hand, but
teetering,
if we see those guys in the game this year.
All right, let's get to some of Bruce Feldman's freaks. Talk a little bit about that. We can go through them. No shocker that Jeremiah Smith was number one on the list. I don't even think Penn State fans could have much of a gripe about that. And he's only played one season, so yeah. That to me, that matchup between Jim Knowles, that secondary, and what they do with Smith. I mean, I can't wait for that. I believe the first player checking in on the freaks list was a defensive lineman for Penn State, the veteran, and it was Zane Durant.
Yep. Yeah, it was. There's really not much that needs to be said about him. He was number 8 on the list. He came into Penn State as a smaller body at defensive tackle, but my God, he just if you watch him in the weight room, he's on another level. If you watch him on the field, his get off and his burst up the middle is just unbelievable. He is absolutely a freak, especially at his size. And at his position, Zane Durant is one of the best defensive players in the country. I go back to, I guess it was that one play against Purdue, Bob. They ran a screen and actually fooled Penn State. But Zane Durant chased down the running back 10 yards down the field before the first down marker. Yeah. If you could find that play and you're a fan, you want to go watch it, kudos to you. But that was a play that I watched in real time. I was like, this Zane Durant is something else.
Yeah, my favorite Zane Durant play to date was actually in 2023 when he smushed the Northwestern quarterback out in Evanston. When it was actually the game, you look at the final score of that game, and it looked like it was kind of in control from the start. It wasn't. They kind of had to get control of that game. It was actually still a game, and I believe Northwestern was inside the 10-yard line, and it was a third down. And Zane Durant, I think he split two guys on the one side, and he hit that quarterback. That quarterback did not get up. Our quarterback still might be a little sore after that. It was a signature play, and it showcased all the things you talked about: his strength, his quickness, his get off. And if you're not ready for a full day, I don't care how good you are, against Zane Durant, he's gonna make you look really, really bad. It's just weird to me that in this day and age, I think what is he, 294 pounds or 292 pounds? He's a little bit. He's not real tall, but that's not really a big deal, I think, for defensive tackles. But he's almost considered undersized, whereas if he played in the 80s or 90s, so he would be a beast. And he is a beast, but it just speaks to how freakish the defensive linemen are right now.
Yeah, I see Zane Durant walking around downtown sometimes in State College. Seen him in a few different places. And, when you think about the meathead from your local gym who, arms are too big for him to put him down at his sides, that's Zane Durant. You're
not calling him a meathead. Let's just get that out of there right now. You were saying, though, that's what came to mind in terms of his body type, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
He is a freak. He deserves that spot on Bruce Feldman's list.
Yeah, and then not really a surprise, but I think Singleton was next on the list. And was he top 20, 19, 18, something like
19,
that?
That's right. But, Bob, don't forget, just a brief mention, number 18 was Jordan Vandenberg, a name that some Penn State fans may remember at defensive tackle. He ended up transferring away to Georgia Tech, but he was always an incredibly strong individual who just never put it together on the field. And he's doing well at Georgia Tech now. But yes, Singleton was number 19.
Yeah, and almost from day one when he enrolled early in January, they were talking about what he could do and how much he could lift and how fast he was, how many miles per hour he could run, and all of that is deserved. And when I think about Nick, I thought he made an adjustment between 2023 and 2024. I know the offensive line was better, but I think Dane Brugler talked about the top running backs for his draft class and who he was looking forward to. And Nick was pretty high on the list. And he's starting to get more and more decisive. And I didn't think he was necessarily that, maybe early in 2023, the offensive line wasn't quite as good. If you remember 2022, he had all those runs, but it was almost like they got him in space and then he just took off. And that's always the deal. If you give Nick a head start or you give him a step and there's no one between him and the goal line, you're not going to catch him. But it's how he's improved in traffic. I think that's been very significant. He can still get better. He's good as a pass protector. And I always think of what he did I guess it was the Illinois game. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was a screen pass or he had first he had a blitz pickup and then he buried someone on a reception. I think he got a little sore after that game, but that was one of the games that really stand out to me because it really showed all the things he can do and how he's gotten better.
I think for a long time, at least me and a couple other media members who I talked to, we discussed Kaytron Allen as the better complete running back, whether it was receiving out of the backfield, but more importantly, like his vision through the line of scrimmage, his ability to get to that second level. But it was always Nick Singleton who was the better athlete, who had the breakaway speed, who, if he got to that second level, was more than likely going to house it. That's not the case anymore. You're absolutely right. Nick changed last year. He became a much better runner between the tackles. Like, Kaytron is still awesome. Don't get me wrong. Kaytron Allen is a great running back. But Nick Singleton, with better vision in front of him, with better understanding of what defenses do, he is just on another level. We saw the breakaway speed finally again last year, like 2022 or 2023 rather. It just wasn't there, and we were worried that something was wrong with Nick, and it clearly that is not the case. And I expect really big things from him again this year.
Yeah, and just to go back to Allen, you said, I think at the start of this podcast, that when James Franklin makes a point, you might want to listen and pay attention because usually he's going to say, when he says something, he knows he knows what he's seen.
Yeah.
He said, look, Kaytron is different this year. No offseason injury issues, full offseason. I about 99.5% sure that we are going to see, we're going to see what he did last year. We're going to see a lot of that, but I do think we might see a quicker guy in space because I think that James has pretty much been saying like this version of Kaytron Allen will be the best version of Kaytron Allen, and we already know he can run over people, and we already know he's really good between the tackles. I think it's a pretty logical deduction that he's gotten better on the perimeter and maybe even as a receiver. Not that he was ever bad, but I have a sneaky feeling that Kaytron might surprise some people this fall.
I really think both of those two guys are going to be changed men with Stan Drayton in tow. Like, Jaywan Sider did a lot of good things at Penn State in a lot of years, but Stan Drayton just has a different approach, a much more intentional way about him in practice.
It's kind of intimidating. I'm not going to lie. I've been around him a lot, but when he said right out of the gate that we're going to work on their weaknesses to these guys that just ran for 1,000 yards, and he was not. There was not a smile on his face. He's like, everyone's got weaknesses, man. We're gonna get them better. And I mean, I think if I was Kaytron and Nick, if he looked at me, I think I would listen to him, and I think whatever he said, I would do.
Listen, that man was the head coach at Temple. He's seen some stuff. He knows knows how to get to guys and how to work through it. I think he's great for those two running backs. I think he's going to do a really good job with them this year.
All right, two more freaks quickly to get to, and then I have a surprise question for you.
Okay.
I would be grading you on this answer, your creativity.
All right.
No big deal. All right, so the final two names on the list, did we say we discussed Tony Rojas or no? We did.
We did not get to Rojas.
Okay, Tony Rojas and Khalil Dinkins. Khalil caught me off guard. I mean,
me too.
I know James said we're not talking enough about him, and I know he doesn't look like he moves very well for a tight end, and all Penn State's tight ends move well, but that surprised me he was on the list, but I guess deservedly so. And Rojas, I saw he ran a 4.37 at 230 pounds. So good luck trying to, if he sees somebody and gets a shot at somebody and he runs 4.37, they're going down.
Yeah, absolutely. Rojas, like, all you got to do is look back at the SMU pick six to understand what kind of athlete he is. He could have played running back at a number of Power 4 schools.
Tennessee wanted him as a running back. He told me in the offseason. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good running back factory.
Yeah, he could have done a lot of things, but listen, he's put on a ton of weight. Tony Rojas looks like an animal. He's going to be really good this year. He's healthy. Had that surgery in the offseason to clean some stuff up. James Franklin said he was never healthy last year. He said that
he got hurt real early.
Yeah, as well as he played at times last year, like he was not healthy. So a healthy Tony Rojas, look out.
Also, if you play through a significant shoulder injury and you play linebacker, got to be a pretty tough guy because it's not like he can. You're not. I mean, that's just kind of you're in the game. Pretty much, you're taking on at least one person at some point during the play. Sometimes it's somebody that's bigger than you. So kudos to him.
Yeah,
glad he's healthy. And Khalil Dinkins, I just want to say he really impressed me. James talked about like every catch was a touchdown. I think he's got 7, touchdowns on like 35. It's some ridiculous ratio, but I really, really, really mean it when I say he was really good as a blocker in the run game. And I think what James said, he could play for a long time in the NFL. You know, he is a guy that you could use in a variety of ways if he stays healthy, and he should get his opportunity not only during the season, but now that he's on the freaks list. If he stays healthy, has a good year, he's going to be at the combine.
Yeah. Oh, he absolutely will be. Let me pull up the numbers that Bruce had in his freaks list here. He said at 6'4" and 255 pounds, Dinkins ran a 4.540, which is, according to Bruce, a record for Penn State tight ends. And hit 21.8 miles per hour. These Penn State tight ends, man, we're running out of things to say about them because they just keep churning them out one after another. Khalil Dinkins deserves to be in the spotlight this year, but again, every time you mention his name, you got to mention Luke Reynolds, and every time you mention Luke Reynolds' name, you got to mention Khalil Dinkins because those two together are they're going to be a heck of a duo. Khalil can do it all. Reynolds is absolutely a star as a pass catcher. They're in good hands.
All right, Max. Speaking of in the spotlight, before we close this Monday edition, first Monday in August. By the way, if you guys are watching this, Max and I both wore our Tiger Woods victory red because we're winners.
Bob,
we're winners after surviving Media Day.
Bob, can I actually show off for those of you watching on YouTube and not just listening?
I hope you would.
We've got Mother Bear's Pizza from Bloomington, Indiana. I went there the last time Penn State was on the road, and I was pleased. It was a good time. So
all right,
yeah.
It's a natural segue. We just talked about Bruce Feldman's freaks list and the 5 Penn State players that were on it. So my question for you: who is number 1 for you on the Penn State media freaks list, and why? Because I know my answer. So I said I was going to tell you about it before the podcast. You're like, no, I like to be surprised. I'm like, all right.
Oh man.
So now I'm rambling for you, but you got about 10 seconds to come up with a name and a reason. So don't blow it, because I'll give you mine.
Bob, you know what? You're right. I take the blame because I said surprise me with this, and I'm really regretting you not having let you tell me what this question was going to be ahead of time. Like I don't even know. There's just such
5 seconds, Max. 5 seconds.
A wide range of ages and body types. You know, like Tyler Donahue he's looking pretty good. You know, like I don't know.
You can't name the whole Max. You can't name the whole beat. You gotta give me an answer.
Look, I'm just. You know, like I'm not trying to be selfish, but I'm younger. Like I think in the weight room, I could probably take on most of those of you who have been around a little longer than myself. But I also can recognize and admit that you know I'm not at my peak at the moment. But like it's on the freaks list. You know, I also know Joel Haas, who just started at statecollege.com, just graduated from Penn State as well. He runs a lot, so. Like, you know, like if he would probably get it. But, you know, if we're strapping on the pads, Bob, I'm not taking anybody over myself.
Yeah. When I said freaks list, you can interpret that a lot of different ways. I just said freaks list. So it's a clear-cut number 1. You're horribly, horribly wrong. God. Number 1 is Mark Brennan of Lions 247 because of that gigantic head of his. Like that thing has got its own solar system. Like, it blocks out the sun. I can't see past him. I've never, and look, I am no stranger. I have a pretty significantly large noggin, but that guy's head size, to me, that will stand the test of time. Next time you see him, it's going to be unavoidable to stare at him. But
I just really hope everybody's
Mark Brennan, just because of his gigantic head. He is clearly the number one freak on the Penn State media beat.
Wow. I just, you see, I did not interpret it in that way, but you took it that way. I just, like I said, I just really hope everybody who was listening,
you're going to be on podcast with me on Monday, and I say, I got a question for you. Just make sure when you say you don't want a heads up that you're ready for anything.
I appreciate the question. Can we also let's not forget that on Saturday, James Franklin specifically said, John Sauber of the Center Daily Times, you could have played offensive line for me in 2012. So
short arm. Short arm. Arms are too short.
But James still said he would have taken him 12 years ago.
All right. It's Brennan for me. I can't even remember who you said, but you were wrong. So we're gonna close out this podcast. I said we would only go 25 minutes, and I'm now looking at 38 minutes. So Kudos to me. You and Johnny will be back on Thursday with a live blue-white breakdown. I may sneak in between now and Thursday with maybe a shorter one. Definitely less than 38 minutes. Just talking about some things that have struck me in the last couple of days. But Max, you're looking good in red. I know I'm looking good in red. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can check out the Blue-White Breakdown anywhere you get your podcasts. We're going to be back. We're just getting started. Max, good chatting with you. And check out all our content, people, on PennLive.